It wasn't even the words that broke me. It was how calm her voice was, like she was telling me what she bought from the store. "I did it," she said, setting her purse on the table like nothing had shifted. "I slept with him." She didn't wait for me to react. Didn't even look at me, actually. She just walked to the sink, filled a glass with water, and drank it. Long, slow sips, like she had all the time in the world. There was still steam rising from the food I had cooked 2 hours ago. She never texted, never called, not even a "be home late." So I waited. Then I reheated the dinner once, twice. Eventually, I just left it on the table. 2 plates, forks, knives, napkins folded like we were still pretending this house had traditions. She glanced at the food. "You didn't have to wait, you know," she said, sitting down. No apology, no panic. Just that same eerie calm you see in people who've already made peace with burning bridges. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. My silence had volume. She picked up her fork, poked at the chicken like it offended her. Then, without looking up, it wasn't just once. A pause. It started at the company retreat in May. Another pause. And it didn't stop. I looked down at my plate. Everything tasted like drywall now. My body wanted to do something, shout, cry, walk out, something, but my brain was stalled. There's a moment right before a car crash when your body senses it's about to be hit. And all you can do is brace. That's what this felt like. But the crash never came. Just her chewing. Just my own heartbeat thudding louder than her words. She finally looked at me. Not with guilt. Not even shame. Just curiosity. Like I was an experiment she was observing from the outside. "You're not saying anything," she said. So I said nothing. I stood up, grabbed my plate, took it to the sink, and rinsed it clean. That night, she slept in our bed. I slept on the floor in the office. Not because she told me to, but because I couldn't bear the weight of her breathing next to me. I stared at the ceiling for hours, wondering how long I'd been a ghost in my own house. The next morning, she stretched in bed like a cat and said, half yawning, "Coffee." But she didn't get coffee. She got a letter. One I'd been holding onto for months. One she didn't know I'd read. And inside it was the real beginning of the end. There's something cruel about finding out the truth from a mistake. It wasn't meant for me. I found the letter a month ago tucked behind a drawer in her vanity, folded neatly in half. No envelope, just creased and worn like it had been opened and read too many times to count. It didn't have my name. It didn't even say "Dear anyone." Just started mid-thought, like a journal entry or a conversation long in motion. "I keep dreaming about you when I'm next to him. I hate how easily I can lie to his face." My hands shook as I read it. At first, I thought it was a page from a novel. The handwriting didn't even look like hers. But the more I read, the colder I got. "He thinks I'm tired from work. But it's you. You exhaust me in all the best ways. I'd give up everything if you just asked." I didn't confront her that night. I didn't sleep either. I just lay there next to her, facing the wall, listening to the shallow rhythm of her breath, wondering how many times she had lied with that same softness in her chest. In the morning, I made coffee like always. She kissed me on the cheek and said she'd be late. I told her to drive safe. We both performed our parts perfectly, like 2 actors who knew the show was ending but had to finish the scene. But I didn't throw the letter away. I made a copy. And this morning, after she asked for coffee like nothing happened, I left it on the kitchen table, folded exactly the same way. Only now, my handwriting was added beneath hers. "I wonder if he knows you write the same way you lie, beautifully." I didn't stay to see her read it. I went for a walk. No phone, just air. The sky was gray and low, the kind that feels heavy even if it doesn't rain. I walked aimlessly, ended up 2 miles from the house, standing outside a closed antique store, staring at my reflection in the glass. I didn't recognize myself. I looked like someone waiting to wake up. When I came back home, the letter was gone from the table. But so was she. The plate from last night was still in the sink. The glass from her water, too. Like she had vanished mid-scene, before the second act. She didn't call, didn't text, didn't even slam a door. And yet the house felt broken, like something invisible had snapped and no one could hear it but me. I checked the bedroom. Empty. I checked her closet. Her favorite coat was missing. And then I saw it. Not a letter this time. Not a message. A single key, set in the center of our bed. The key to the storage unit we rented during the renovation last year. The one she said she hadn't touched in months. Only now I had a reason to believe she'd been there. and I had a gut feeling that whatever was inside, it wasn't leftover furniture. It was proof. But of what? I didn't go to the storage unit right away. The key sat in my palm for hours like it was radiating heat. I kept flipping it over, staring at the worn edges, the little white tag she'd scribbled our unit number on in permanent marker, 117B. Her handwriting was unmistakable, round, controlled, confident. The kind of handwriting you get when you're used to being believed. I put the key on the kitchen counter and just stood there, thinking about how long she must have been planning this. Not the affair. No, that part was clear. That was messy and impulsive and desperate in the way only office affairs can be. What chilled me was this key. This quiet decision to leave it behind like a breadcrumb, a silent dare. She wanted me to find it. Or she wanted me to find what was inside. Either way, she was finished hiding. By mid-afternoon, the silence in the house became unbearable. Every room felt like it was watching me. Her perfume still hung faintly in the air. I opened all the windows. Let the cold in. I needed it to bite. I needed it to wake me up. The drive to the storage facility was only 15 minutes, but it felt longer, like each traffic light was trying to talk me out of going. My thoughts were spinning. I started wondering if maybe I was wrong. Maybe it was just old furniture. Maybe she'd used the unit for Christmas gifts or some harmless secret I'd blown out of proportion in my paranoia. But when I pulled into the lot and saw the row of rust-stained doors lined up like tombstones, I knew better. Unit 117. B was at the far end, right under a busted security light that flickered erratically, casting shadows that twitched like nervous hands. My hands were shaking as I slid the key into the lock. It clicked open too easily, like it had been used recently. Too recently. I lifted the metal door, and there it was. At first, I didn't see anything unusual, just boxes. Labeled neatly, books, kitchen, winter clothes. But behind those, tucked into the back corner, was a black suitcase. New. Definitely not ours. Not unless we bought luggage I couldn't remember, which I knew we hadn't. I dragged it into the light, placed it on a cardboard box, and unzipped it. Inside was a stack of men's clothes, shirts, jeans, boxers, a belt, all folded military neat. Beneath them, a framed photo of her. Not us. Her. Alone. Wearing that same crooked smile she wore when she told me about the affair. This photo wasn't taken by a stranger. It was intimate. Close. Intentional. She was looking into the camera like she knew exactly who was holding it. And beneath the photo was a printed plane ticket. One way. Departing next week. To Denver. Under someone else's last name. Not mine. And at the very bottom of the suitcase, wrapped in a folded sweatshirt, was something I never expected. A second phone. Not a burner. This wasn't that kind of story. It was a regular smartphone. Locked, of course. But taped to the back was a sticky note with a 4-digit number scribbled in red ink. It looked familiar, because it was our anniversary date. I entered it. Unlocked on the first try. And what I saw on that phone wasn't just proof. It was a blueprint. Conversations. Photos. Voice memos. A shared notes app with a countdown titled Exit Strategy. Venues. Rent prices. A folder titled Papers to File. Every single thing you'd need to start a new life with someone else. Without your husband. And at the very top of the phone's gallery was a video thumbnail. Dated just 2 nights ago. Recorded in our house. I didn't play it. Not yet. Because in that moment, I realized something worse than betrayal. She didn't just cheat on me. She planned to disappear. And I was never supposed to notice until she was already gone. But now, I had her playbook. And she didn't know that yet. I sat in my car outside the storage unit for a long time with the phone in my hands, screen dark, my thumb hovering over the play button. The part of me that wanted the truth was screaming to watch it. But another part, the one that still wanted to believe this could be undone, begged me to look away. For just one more day? One more minute of not knowing. But I tapped it. The screen flickered. Then a handheld view of my living room lit up. Our couch. Our rug. Our framed wedding photo crooked on the wall. And then her voice. She was laughing. Not the nervous, fake laugh she gave me when I'd ask if everything was okay. This was different. This was real. Joyful. Carefree. The camera flipped, and there she was. In my t-shirt. Hair messy. Knees tucked under her as she curled into someone's arms. I couldn't see him yet, but I didn't need to. His voice was enough. Deep. Confident. Unbothered. He's never home, huh? He's always home, she said. He just doesn't matter anymore. They both laughed. I paused the video. I had to. My lungs had locked up. I stared out the windshield, watching the trees sway like they were shaking their heads at me. The world suddenly felt like it had been rewritten, and I was the only one who hadn't been told. I took a breath. Pressed play again. She shifted the camera toward him. He looked younger. Mid-30s maybe. Black hoodie, scruff on his jaw, cocky grin. He wasn't attractive in any traditional way, but he radiated the kind of confidence you only get when you know you're winning a game someone else doesn't know they're playing. They started talking about plans. How they were days away now. She joked about how I wouldn't even notice until the fridge was empty and her side of the closet was bare. Then she said something that froze me. He's so soft. Like he'd probably help me pack if I asked. And he replied, Let him. Let him carry the bags to the car. I didn't finish the video. I couldn't. Not because I was afraid of what else they'd say, but because I knew myself. Knew I'd memorize every word. Replay it at 2 a.m. for the next 6 years. I didn't want this betrayal etched into my bones. I just needed to know enough to stop lying to myself. I powered off the phone. Sat there until the sun started to dip behind the horizon. Then I drove home. Not because I wanted to see her. She still wasn't back. I didn't expect her to be. No, I went home because I needed to think. I needed to sit inside the crime scene while it was still fresh. The house was quiet. Her scent still lingered in the fabric of the furniture. Her hairbrush still sat on the bathroom counter. Her favorite coffee mug, the blue one with the chipped handle, was on the windowsill, just like always. Everything was where it had always been, except her. And now I knew, soon, all of this would be gone. She was packing a life without me in the shadows. I wasn't even a character in the next chapter, just a footnote. But that's when something shifted. Something in me hardened. Because up until now, I'd been the man she expected me to be. The man who stays silent, stays soft, stays small. But what she didn't know was that I had one final move. One she hadn't accounted for. I wasn't going to confront her. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to let her finish writing her story, down to the last period, and then I'd change the ending myself. The strangest thing about betrayal isn't the pain, it's the precision. The way it slices you with perfect, surgical detail. You don't bleed out fast. It's slow, measured, deliberate. And in that slowness, you see everything too clearly. When I got back home that evening, something inside me clicked. It wasn't rage. It wasn't grief anymore. It was a kind of cold focus I hadn't felt in years, like stepping outside during winter and realizing the cold doesn't hurt anymore, because you've already gone numb. The house was still empty. She hadn't come back. But I noticed her car had moved slightly on the driveway, the front tires angled just a bit to the left. A tiny detail most people wouldn't notice. But I did, because I was watching now. She'd stopped being careful. She thought she was ahead of me. That's what gave me power. She still believed I was clueless. She still believed I was the man in the dark, the one who'd cry himself to sleep while she disappeared in plain sight. I decided not to break the illusion. Not yet. Instead, I made dinner. 2 plates. Like always. I turned on the porch light. Set her phone charger on her nightstand. Folded her robe at the foot of the bed. I let everything look untouched. Because in her story, I was still the fool. But I had already begun writing mine. I sat at the kitchen table, laptop open, not typing anything. Just watching the front door. Listening to every sound. When I finally heard her keys jingling at the door just after 11, I closed the screen. She walked in like nothing had changed. Hair tied back, face clean, dressed casually, like she had just come from grocery shopping or yoga or some other illusion of routine. She looked surprised to see me awake. Oh, she said, didn't think you'd still be up. I smiled. That's the hardest part, by the way, smiling when your heart wants to tear through your ribs and scream. But I did it. I told her I couldn't sleep, that I was just reading, that dinner was in the fridge if she was hungry. She said she already ate. With who? I didn't ask. She didn't offer. She kissed me on the cheek. I let her. She went upstairs, showered, got into bed. And in the dark, I lay beside her, listening to her breathing even out, wondering how she could sleep knowing what she had planned. Wondering if she thought she was protecting me by not disappearing all at once. Easing me into abandonment like it would hurt less if it came in pieces. But she was wrong. It was the pretending that did the most damage. In the middle of the night, when she shifted in her sleep, her hand brushed against mine. And that small touch, that accidental contact, made something twist inside me. Not because I missed her, but because I realized something terrifying. I didn't even want her back anymore. I wanted closure. And maybe something a little darker than that. I slipped out of bed quietly, walked to the garage, sat in the car with the door closed, engine off. Darkness wrapped around me like a second skin. I pulled out the second phone, the one from the suitcase, and opened the shared notes again. A new message had been added, just hours ago. 1 more week. Don't blow it. No signature. No emojis. Just those words. So it was still on. The plan was active. 1 more week until she vanished. Until the bags were packed. Until the life we'd built was traded in for some stranger's apartment in Denver and a new identity with fewer complications. But here's what she doesn't know. I had already booked a one-way flight. Not to follow her. Not to stop her. But to be exactly where I needed to be when her plan went live. Because the next time she looks over her shoulder, I'll already be standing there. And everything she thinks she's escaping from will be waiting. I've heard people say the opposite of love is hate. They're wrong. Hate still requires energy. It's still tethered to the person. The real opposite of love is apathy, that numb, drifting state where you don't even flinch at their absence. That's where I was now. I didn't cry anymore. I didn't pace the floors at night. I didn't lie awake wondering where she was. Instead, I started noticing how little I actually thought about her. How much of our marriage was routine, a performance we both stopped auditioning for years ago. She just happened to be the first one brave enough to leave the stage. But while she rehearsed her exit, I began rewriting the script. I wasn't reckless. I didn't change anything loud. I didn't confront her. I didn't cancel our anniversary dinner reservations she'd obviously forgotten about. I didn't call her out on the smudged lipstick at midnight or the unfamiliar hoodie in the trunk of her car. I just started rearranging. It began small. I moved her suitcase in the storage unit 2 inches to the left. She'd never know unless she checked. I turned off location services on her burner phone and left the settings page open. I put one of her bras, the red one I hadn't seen in months, into the drawer she never uses, just to see if she'd notice its sudden reappearance. She didn't. She never noticed anything unless it served her plan. She didn't know I'd already spoken to the man she was running away from, not the one she was running to. Her boss, Theo, the same guy from the video, the same one she thought she was building a new life with. I called his office pretending to be from a private courier service and asked if he was available to sign for legal documents. The receptionist laughed and said he hadn't been in the office all week. A quick search later, and I found out why. Theo didn't live in Denver. Theo lived in Chicago. And according to public court records, Theo had filed for a legal name change 5 months ago, not because he was hiding, but because he was already married to someone else. So now the game wasn't just betrayal. It was betrayal inside betrayal. She wasn't leaving me for someone real. She was leaving me for someone who was already halfway out of her fantasy. And she didn't know it yet. That's when I decided to up the stakes. I printed out a copy of Theo's marriage certificate, slipped it between the pages of her favorite poetry book, the one she pretended to read when guests came over. I didn't say a word. I didn't mark it. I just left it there, waiting. And then I started texting myself from a number I bought online. One of those temporary message apps. I wrote like him, casually, short, intimate phrases. Still on for next week? You sure he doesn't know? This is going to work. I promise. I made sure to leave my phone open on the counter while I showered. She never asked about it, but she saw it. I know she did. Her whole rhythm changed after that. She became more cautious. She stayed off her phone around me. She started asking vague questions like, everything okay with work? Or, you've been kind of distracted lately. It wasn't guilt. It was suspicion. And that's what I wanted. Because I wasn't going to take anything from her. I was going to let her unravel her own lie, thread by thread, until she couldn't tell what was real anymore. And when that moment came, when she stood in the ashes of everything she thought she built with him, I'd be there. Not with anger, not with revenge, but with the quiet, devastating truth that I had seen the whole thing coming and said nothing. Because silence, when timed correctly, is the loudest ending of all. I knew the shift had happened the moment she started locking the bathroom door again. We used to share everything, razors, toothpaste, dumb morning banter through the shower steam. But now she brushed her teeth with the door shut. And when I passed her phone lying screen down, she flipped it over like it might explode if I looked too long. She was unraveling. Not loudly, not publicly, but in those small, almost invisible ways that only someone who knows you can spot. And I was watching all of it. She still didn't know about Theo's marriage. Still didn't know the fantasy was already cracking beneath her. She hadn't opened the book I planted it in. Or if she had, she was pretending she hadn't. Either way, it didn't matter, because I had already begun the next move. I printed out photos. Not explicit ones. Just suggestive enough. Images of a fake other woman. Me at a coffee shop with a friend I'd staged it with. Her hand on my arm. Her smile a little too intimate. One of us walking down the street, too close. I'd made sure the angles looked stolen, as if someone else had taken them. And I left them in a drawer I knew she snooped through. Not often, just enough. Enough to make it believable when she accidentally found them. The next day, her energy shifted completely. She didn't bring up the pictures. Didn't accuse me. She just hovered. Made breakfast for the first time in months. Asked me 3 times if I needed anything before work. Kissed me twice instead of once. She even wore the perfume I told her I liked. The one she said she'd grown out of. I wasn't flattered. I was confirming a theory. She didn't care that she had hurt me. She only cared that I might not be there when she came back around. She only cared when control slipped through her hands. That night, I came home and found her sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open and a half glass of wine untouched beside her. She smiled too quickly when I walked in. Closed the screen a little too fast. I asked her how her day was. She said fine a little too casually. Then asked, and yours? With a hint of practiced interest. I knew the performance. I'd used it myself when I had nothing left to give, but didn't want to seem cruel. Then, and I still can't believe this, she said, you've been acting different lately. Is there something going on? I almost laughed. She said it like we were 2 coworkers who accidentally touched hands in the break room. As if her betrayal didn't still live in every inch of this house. As if her plane ticket wasn't already booked. I just smiled and said, nothing you don't already know. She didn't push. She never did when she was afraid of the answer. And that's when I knew. She was losing control of the narrative. She could feel the sand shifting under her, but couldn't tell if it was her own doing or mine. The most dangerous thing you can do to someone who builds their life on secrecy is become a mirror. Don't fight them. Just reflect everything back until they can't tell if they're seeing you or themselves. That night, I planted one more seed. I told her I was thinking of taking a solo trip for a few days. Somewhere cold. Quiet. Just to reset, I said. She hesitated. Too long. Then nodded. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. You deserve it. Deserve. That word. So loaded. So fake coming from her mouth. But I nodded anyway. Because I knew what she was thinking. Good. Go ahead. Leave. Let me finish this in peace. But I wasn't going anywhere. Because while she thought I was packing bags for a weekend in Vermont, I was actually preparing for the last conversation we would ever have as husband and wife. Only one part remained. The final day. The final move. The moment I'd watched her destroy our life without knowing I'd been sitting in the front row, documenting every lie, every whisper, every fake smile. The morning of the day she planned to leave, she made pancakes. She never made pancakes. I came downstairs to the smell of syrup and cinnamon, sunlight bleeding through the kitchen blinds like a movie scene. For a second, it almost felt like nothing had happened. Like the months of distance, of betrayal, of planning behind my back, had all been a dream. But they hadn't. And she knew that I knew. I could see it in her hands, trembling slightly as she flipped the last pancake. I could see it in the way she glanced at my phone when it buzzed. I could hear it in the way she said good morning, too rehearsed, too high-pitched. She was trying to be sweet, trying to return to a version of herself I hadn't seen in a long time. But it was already done. I ate quietly, didn't speak. She talked about nothing, weather, laundry, weekend plans she would never keep. Then, when the silence grew too loud between us, she said, "You've been distant lately." I looked up, finally. "So have you." She didn't respond. She just stood there, pretending to sip her coffee, probably wondering whether I'd found the tickets. Or the photos. Or the letter. Or all of it. I let her wonder. Then I reached into my jacket pocket, pulled out an envelope, and slid it across the table. Her name was written on the front. Inside, divorce papers. Signed. Dated. Final. She stared at it like it was glowing. "You don't want to talk about it?" she asked quietly. "No," I said. "I've already said everything I needed to. You just weren't listening." Her shoulders dropped, like she'd been holding her breath for a month. But it wasn't sadness in her eyes. It wasn't guilt either. It was something worse. Relief. And weirdly, I understood it. She never hated me. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't distant. I just stopped being the version of me that she wanted to carry into her next life. And she didn't know how to tell me that without tearing the whole house down. So she set it on fire instead. I stood up, put on my coat. My bag was already packed. She said, "Where are you going?" And I said, "To start over. Somewhere quieter." She blinked like she didn't expect me to have a plan. Maybe she thought I'd fight, that I'd chase, that I'd beg her to stay and say we could fix it. But I didn't want to fix it. I wanted to be free from it. At the door, I turned back one last time. She looked smaller now, not in size, but in energy. Like whatever power she held over me had shrunk down to the truth. She was just a person who made choices. And so was I, and I made mine. I said, "Thank you." She furrowed her brow. "For what?" "For showing me who you really were," I said, before I wasted another year pretending I didn't already know. And then I left. It's been 6 months. I live near the coast now. Small place. Quiet. I see the ocean from my window. I make my own breakfast. I don't flinch when the door opens behind me. I don't have to wonder who someone's texting when they smile at their phone. I don't sleep beside lies anymore. I don't miss her. Not because I've erased her, but because I finally remembered myself. And some part of me, the version that nearly broke trying to hold something together that was already gone, finally exhaled. She thought she was leaving me behind, but I was the one walking away the whole time.